No one dared to take the job after 8 professionals failed in just 3 days until a quiet young woman knocked on the door and did the impossible. Not with miracles, but with love. Ethan Carter, once a fearless investigative journalist, now stood helpless in his Seattle penthouse, undone by 2 small forces of nature. His 5-year-old twin sons, after losing his wife unexpectedly to a brain aneurysm, his life had become a quiet storm of grief, chaos, and failed attempts to keep it together. 8 nannies had come and gone, all outsmarted or broken by the boy's untamed energy and buried sorrow. But everything changed the moment Amara Fields arrived. She wasn't what Ethan expected. No polished heels or glowing arsum, just a soft cardigan, calm eyes, and a handwritten 1-page commitment. 6 months of care. No promises, no conditions, just presence. Amara didn't pitch herself as a savior. She simply asked to meet the boys, not as a candidate, but as a person. That first morning, as chaos erupted with missing dinosaur toys and shirt meltdowns, Amara didn't flinch. She handed Ethan a mug of coffee and said gently, "They're not difficult. They're scared." And with nothing more than a plush puppy named Toby and a lullaby-soft voice, she coaxed Leo from the closet and calmed Max's storm. It wasn't magic. It was presence. And it was the first time in over a year Ethan saw stillness, real lasting stillness in his home. Amara hadn't just stepped into their apartment. She had begun stepping into their hearts. That stillness didn't end with a single morning. It deepened day by day like roots growing beneath the surface. Amara showed up each sunrise with a thermos of coffee, and that same steady grace as if leaving had never been an option. She never tried to replace the boy's mother, never pushed for affection or approval. Instead, she offered what no one else had: presents without pressure, love without labels. Max was the first to test her. He forgot his lunchbox spilled milk on purpose, and once snapped that she wasn't his mom. Amara didn't scold or flinch. She simply handed him a towel and helped clean Themas. "Accidents happen," she whispered. "We fix things together." Leo, on the other hand, kept his sorrow tucked in silence. He watched from corners, never asked questions, but always listened. One night, while Amara read quietly nearby, he walked over and placed his blanket over her legs. No words, just trust. Ethan watched all of this unfold quietly, stunned. Mealtimes grew calmer. Bedtimes came with fewer tears. Max even tried broccoli after. Amara shared a childhood story about being afraid of green things until she discovered cheese made them less terrifying. Laughter returned to the kitchen. The boys stopped asking if she would bether when they got home and started assuming she would, and Amara stayed. She built Lego towers with Max, but let them choose the height. She read stories to Leo, waiting patiently during long pauses. She answered their questions about their mom gently. Love, like hers, doesn't disappear. One rainy Saturday, Ethan came home to find Amara baking cookies, Leo arranging crescent-shaped dough, Max dusted in flour. The air smelled of butter and hope. That's when Ethan realized this wasn't temporary anymore. Amara wasn't just helping, she was healing. Not with bold declarations or dramatic fixes, but with quiet consistency. With every bedtime story, every soft-spoken truth, every emire, she was stitching their family back together, one heartbeat at a time. One Thursday night, the fragile piece Amara had helped rebuild was suddenly tested. Max burst into Ethan's office, cheeks flushed with panic. "Leo shot," he gasped. He called for Amara. Not for Dad, not for help. He called for her. Without hesitation, Ethan followed Max down the hall. They found Leo curled under his blanket, sweat beading on his brow, cheeks flushed. And there, Amara was already at his side, as if she had known before anyone else. Her hand rested gently on Leo's forehead, the other rubbing his back in slow, comforting circles. No panic, no noise, just presence. "Can you hear me, Leo?" she murmured, her voice soft as a lullaby. "I'm right here." Leo gave the faintest nod. A single tear slid down his temple, not from pain, but relief. Ethan stood at the doorway, struck by something he couldn't explain. In all his grief, in all his failed attempts to hold it together, he had never reached the boys like this. Amara hadn't barged into their walls. She had been invited in breath by breath, moment by moment. When the pediatricians arrived, Amara didn't move from Leo's side. After the fever broke, Leo fell asleep in her arms, still clutching Toby. Max, standing in the doorway, turned to Ethan and whispered, "I think Amara is Ariel person, not someone who leaves." And in that quiet, Ethan finally heard it, not just a child's voice, but the truth he'd been too afraid to name. The next morning, nothing needed to be said. Ethan poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. Amara took hers with a tired smile. No awkwardness, no explanations, just the unspoken knowledge that something had changed. From then on, their days settled into something that felt like rhythm, like home. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. And for the first time in over a year, Ethan dared to believe maybe, just maybe, they were becoming whole again. But just as the wounds began to close, a new storm broke, one they never saw coming. It started with a headline. While flipping shark-shaped pancakes on a quiet Monday morning, just as she had promised Max Amorous, phone buzzed. Her breath caught as she stared at the screen. From nanny to heiress, Claire Field spotted living in millionaire Ethan Carter's penthouse. Photos taken without permission filled the screen. Amara shopping for medicine with Ethan. Amara watching over Leo asleep on the couch. Amara entering the building with a resident key card. The article twisted every kind moment into scandal. It questioned her background, dredged up her past as a teacher, who had left suddenly after a mysterious incident, and implied she was exploiting Ethan and Hissens for status. Ethan saw the shock in her eyes as he entered the kitchen. "I didn't need to ask. It'll get legal involved," he said immediately. "They can't do this to you." But Amara didn't speak right away. When she finally did, her voice trembled. "I'm not afraid of them, Ethan. I'm afraid the boys will hear someone say, 'The woman you trusted was lying.'" And then the school called. Due to community concern, they said Amara was suspended from pickup duty until further notice. Max asked why she hadn't walked them to school. Leo said nothing, but the look in his eyes said everything. That evening, Amara sat outside on the balcony rain, gently tapping against the railing. Ethan brought her tea, but words failed. The silence between them was heavy, not cold, but heartbreaking. The next morning, she packed quietly before the boys woke. She left 2 stuffed animals on their pillows, one in a superhero cape, the other in a detective's hat. Each had a note. "I'm not leaving you. Sometimes grown-ups step back to protect the people they love most. If there's still space in your heart for me, you'll find my way back." And then she closed the door behind her. No tears, no goodbye, just a mother's quiet heartbreak walking away. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table long after the boys had gone to bed, staring at the 2 plush toys Amara had left behind. Her handwriting so gentle, so deliberate, echoed louder than any storm. "If there's still space in your heart, form," as if she hadn't already filled every corner of their lives. By morning, Max's first words were, "Where's Amara?" Ethan clenched his jaw, unsure how to answer. But before he could speak, Leo stepped out of his room, holding the detective hat plush tight against his chest. "I think she still remembers us," he whispered. That broke something open in Ethan. He dug through years of connections, legal contacts, and old newsroom favors until he found the name behind the article. Vincent Hale, a bitter CEO of a rival media empire, Ethan had exposed his corruption 3 years earlier in a front-page expose. This wasn't journalism. It was revenge. He didn't wait. Ethan called a press conference and stood where he once reported the world's darkest truths, this time speaking his own. Claire Fields, his voice steady as not a headline. She is the reason my family found peace again. She didn't ask for anything. She gave everything. She didn't pretend to be their mother, but she became one. The statement went viral. Photos of Amara reading bedtime stories, baking cookies, holding Leo. After a fever circulated again, this time with different captions. Maybe the only thing she ever took was their hearts. Amara saw the clip from a small calf in the North End. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She had tried to walk away for their protection, but now the truth stood in the open. The next message came from Ethan. If you still think you're an outsider, just look at what you've built. Then a voice recording arrived. Max's voice trembled. Amara, if you hear this, please come home. Leo won't talk. And Toby misses you. That was all it took. That evening, Ethan opened the door to find her, soaked from the rain, eyes swollen, hands shaking. I'm not sure I should come back, she said, her voice barely audible. But I can't be anywhere else. He didn't say a word. He just stepped aside and opened the door wider. Leo ran first, arms wrapping around her legs like anchors. Max followed, holding out Toby, now wearing a tiny green scarf. We made it so he could find his way back to you, he said softly. Amara knelt and pulled both boys into her arms, breathless with relief. I missed you every single day. And in that moment, the apartment didn't just feel like home. It was home again. That night, after the boys fell asleep, wrapped around her like vines reclaiming their tree, Amara sat quietly in the living room, cradling Toby in her lap. The apartment was dim, lit only by the glow of the nightlight from the hallway. Ethan poured her a cup of peppermint tea and joined her on the couch without a word. You can stay, he said gently, as long as you want. No contract, no explanations. Just stay. Amara looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't need anything, just Toby here. From that moment on, no one called her the nanny anymore because the word didn't fit. She was the one Leo showed his first lost tooth to, the one Max asked to come to parent-teacher meetings. The woman in the olive green cardigan had become the center of their world, not as a replacement, but as something entirely her own. One spring morning, inside a softly lit hospital room, that truth deepened. Ethan sat beside Amara, hand clasping hers. On the screen, a tiny heartbeat pulsed like a secret melody. It's a girl. The doctor smiled. Strong heartbeat. Everything looks perfect. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, not from fear, but from something deeper, gentler. Ethan exhaled slowly, as if the entire world had been holding its breath. When he looked at her, his face was calm, not stunned, but moved like a man watching light filter through a stained glass window. Later that night, the boys climbed into bed beside her, wrapping their arms around her growing belly. Can she hear us? Max asked, pressing his cheek to her stomach. Do you think she likes shark stories? Leo didn't speak. He just placed his tiny hand over her belly and smiled faintly. I think she already knows who I am. Then Max's voice came soft as a prayer. Mommy! Amara froze, tears stinging the corners of her eyes. Leo echoed, Good night, Mommy. No one told them to say it. No one rehearsed it. It simply came as natural as breath. A name spoken not from biology, but from belonging. And in that moment, Amara didn't need adoption papers or formal declarations. She was their mother in every way that mattered. In the days that followed, Ethan became unusually quiet, not distant, but thoughtful. He began scribbling in his notebook again, whispering with Max and Leo when Amara wasn't around, and checking the calendar like a man with a secret. Amara noticed, of course, but after everything they'd survived, She had learned not to press, only to wait. What she didn't know was that a plan was already in motion. Max had drawn the blueprint himself, crayons, and Alan proudly named it Operation Ask Mommy to Stay Forever. Leo was in charge of the cookies, carefully shaping them into tiny hearts throughout the week. And Ethan, he handled the most important part, making sure the question wasn't just asked, but truly meant. One evening, Amara returned from a prenatal checkup belly, now softly visible beneath her sweater. The apartment was dark, strangely quiet. She assumed they'd all gone to bed early, but as she flipped on the kitchen light, the room bloomed with soft golden string lights, casting a warm glow on the dining table. At the center of the table sat a handmade card, in wobbly but unmistakable handwriting. "Mommy, will you stay forever?" Her hand flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Behind her footsteps, Leo stood cradling Toby in his arms. Max held up a tiny ring box, his small hands trembling with nervous pride. Then Ethan stepped forward, lowering himself to one knee. "You've done what no one else ever could," he said softly. "You didn't just heal our hearts. You helped us believe again. You never tried to replace anyone. You just stayed, and that was enough." He paused, breath thick with emotion. "I don't need promises for forever, but if you'll have Yusmeak's Leo and our little Sonny, let us be your family always." Amara couldn't speak. She could only nod through tears collapsing into their arms, laughter mingling with sobs. They married 1 month later in the small backyard where the boys once had pillow fights. Now it became the garden of vows, laughter, and paper petals Leo had spent all week cutting out. No grand ceremony, no fancy crowd, just 4 hearts, and a 5th quietly growing, promising never to walk away again. Sonny was born on a quiet spring morning, the kind Seattle rarely offered, where the rain paused just long enough for sunlight to peek through like a whispered promise. Inside the hospital room, the air shimmered with something sacred. Amara lay exhausted but glowing, her forehead damp with sweat, her hands trembling slightly as she cradled Thetany life resting on her chest. Sonny's cry was soft but sure, her tiny fists clenched as if holding on to the light that had finally found her. Ethan sat beside them, speechless. He had witnessed many powerful moments in his life, exposing corruption, challenging injustice, but nothing came close to this. When the doctor smiled and said, "A healthy baby girl. Both mother and child are doing perfectly." He exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding since Amara whispered she was pregnant. Later, Max and Leo arrived, holding hands their steps hesitant as they approached the hospital bed. Max's eyes widened. "She's so small," he whispered. "Smaller than Toby," Leo added, almost in awe. Amara laughed softly and gently placed Sonny into Max's arms. His face was a mix of pride and terror, but he sat up straight, careful not to move. "Hi, Sonny," he said, his voice full of wonder. "I'm Max. I promised to tell you the best shark stories ever." Leo stepped forward silent as always and laid a soft cloth, his baby blanket, over his sister. "She's cold," he murmured. This kept her warm before in Mommy's tummy. No one corrected him. No one needed to. In that moment, there were no more doubts, no more questions of belonging. Just a little girl nestled in love, surrounded by the family who had waited broken, healed, and hoped for her. In the weeks that followed, lullabies filled the nights, and sleepy smiles lit the days. Ethan and Amara took turns rocking. Sonny, while Max and Leo folded tiny onesies and argued over who got to teach her how to build a pillow fort. Then, one golden afternoon, back in the yard, where forever had been promised, Amara sat on a bench, Sonny resting peacefully in her arms. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, his hand covering hers as if anchoring them all to that moment. "I used to think we'd lost the best part of life," Amara whispered. Ethan smiled. watching Max and Leo chase paper planes through the sun-dappled grass. "And then Sunny came," he said, "and you brought it all back." And from that night forward, something shifted. Not in big flashy ways, but in all the small, quiet spaces that truly mattered. Amara no longer wondered if she belonged, Ethan no longer hesitated to reach for her hand. And the boys, well, they simply lived as if she had always been there. On Sunday mornings, Max asked if she could make shark-shaped pancakes forever. Leo would quietly draw pictures with 5 figures instead of 4. The word mommy wasn't whispered with uncertainty anymore. It came naturally. It came with trust. It came from love. Sometimes family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build piece by piece with patience, presence, and the courage to stay when it's hardest. Amara didn't earn her place through grand gestures or formal titles. She earned it by showing up every single day and loving without conditions. And in a world so full of temporary things, the choice to stay is one of the rarest, most powerful acts of all. If this story touched your heart even just a little, don't forget to hit that like button. Leave a comment about someone who chose to stay in your life, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that remind us what love truly looks like. Because sometimes the people who come later are the ones who never leave.